So we've been davening, right? And we started davening with SEDER. And the SEDER has its shorish in the word SEDER, order. These words, this order, eventually went away from the Bet HaMikdash and its karbanot, its sacrifices, and eventually evolved into words. These words replace sacrifice. Obviously, when the Jewish people, thousands of years ago, they were like every other human being on the planet. They were like, Wall Street hadn't been built yet, or the Empire State Building, and neither had the Narrows, or the San Francisco Gate, or Queen Mary, or the Queen Elizabeth crossing the channels. They had animal skins on them. This is where creationism comes in sync with the Torah, the evolution of man. Man had to come from something. He didn't read yet about Freud and people like Jean-Paul Sartre and so forth, and Dr. Zhivago by Pasternak. They lived with stones and clubs. And what people said had great meaning. That's why the Torah was so powerful when it came in. It was like Madison Avenue on steroids. Moshe Rabbeinu came from Mount Sinai. The people were overwhelmed with super media, super force, because they had been schlepping around and banging stones, making big stones into little stones and little stones into big stones, and they built Pithom and Ramses for the Egyptians. They built pyramids. This is the life they had with straw and mud. And all of a sudden, there was created a SEDER, like the SEDER, like we have when we replicate that SEDER at the SEDER on Pesach, an order of things. And why is that so important? How am I going to tie it into my Devar Torah this morning? Because we had chaos. You don't have SEDER. Complete another chaos. Good is evil, evil is bad. Everything is Moshe Kapoya. Everything is upside, inside out. And we have, to our dismay, Jewish anti-Semites. Believe it or not. We've always had them. So there is anti-Semitism born of Semites, those same little guys that crawled out of Egypt. Rabbeinu had the same Soros with Doton ve'Aviram. He had a rebellion. He said, who are you to be the big guy taking us out of Egypt? How can the so-called intellectual Jewish elite recognize the mandate? Like I said last week, Dina de Malchuta Dina, the law of the land is the law. If newspapers and the media are distorting and keeping the truth from America, including academia. The Hartford Courant newspaper cites the New York Times, quote, James Bennett resigned on Sunday from his job as the editorial page editor of the New York Times, days after the newspaper opinion section, which he oversaw, published a much criticized op-ed by a US senator calling for military response to civic unrest in American cities. Quote, last week we saw a significant breakdown in our editing process. Note, for a breakdown, this is Sulzberger talking, whose grandfather was Jewish, that founded the New York Times. Note, there was a breakdown in the peaceful demonstration process. There was a breakdown. Really, there was a breakdown in the peaceful? That would be putting it, a fly walked across the street as opposed to an elephant walked across the street. It's not the first we've experienced in recent years, said A.G. Sulzberger, the publisher, in a note to the staff on Sunday announcing Bennett's departure. Don't forget, A.G. Sulzberger's paternal grandfather was Jewish. In a brief interview, Sulzberger added, "Both of us concluded that James would not be able to lead the team through the next leg of the change that is required. Change that would be more PC and inoffensive to the left." At an all-staff virtual meeting on Friday, Bennett, 54, apologized. The editor of the New York Times apologized. He genuflected for the op-ed, saying that he should not have published and that it had not been edited carefully enough. An editor's note posted last Friday noted factual inaccuracies and a needlessly harsh tone. The essay fell short of our standards and should not have been published, the note said. This is Sulzberger. What exactly are those standards? Does the New York Times have any standards? The op-ed by Senator Tom Cotton, a Republican from Arkansas, had said, "Send troops. Send in the troops," he said, as a headline. "One thing above all else will restore order to our streets. SEDER," remember SEDER, "is an overwhelming show of force to disperse, detain, and ultimately deter lawbreakers, not peaceable demonstrators, lawbreakers," he wrote. "Dina de Malchuta Dina, the law of the land is Talmud." The piece published on Wednesday drew anger from the readers and the Times journalists. Bennett declined to comment. Look who's calling the kettle black. A.G. Sulzberger, publisher of the anti-Semitic New York Times. Blaze TV cites Mark Levin. Here's what Mark Levin said. Television's Mark Levin explained how one of America's most famous newspapers has been complicit in the rise of anti-Semitism in the United States for several decades. Quote, "The New York Times has nearly 100-year history of anti-Semitism," Levin explained, citing examples further outlined in his forthcoming book, Unfreedom of the Press. Levin explained how the newspaper's complicity in anti-Semitism goes back to the days of the Third Reich, when the outlet intentionally hid the news of the Holocaust in its back pages when it even talked about it, which was rare. The New York Times made it virtually impossible for the American people to know what was taking place in the early parts of the Third Reich, in the early parts of the Holocaust. Levin concluded of the outlet's reportage. How does Middle America get its news if the anti-Semitic New York Times can yank an inconvenient truth? Op-ed by Senator Tom Cotton. Former member of the Knesset, Dr. Einat Wilf, warned against, this is an example of taking away the First Amendment right, warned against defacing and removing monuments and statues of historical figures due to associations with oppression or racism following the vandalism of statues of Abraham Lincoln and Winston Churchill in England. These are, of course, violations of the First Amendment, freedom of speech and expression. If Jews took down, listen to this, what the member of the Knesset said, If Jews took down the symbols of their discrimination, oppression, persecution, ethnic cleansing, and genocide, not a stone or flag would remain across the Western and Islamic worlds. Human history, mostly one of brutality and exploitation. To move forward, we remember, not erase. There wouldn't be a Yad Vashem. There wouldn't be a National Holocaust Memorial Center in Washington. There would not be a Simon Wiesenthal Center in LA if all we did would be to erase, not to remember. Swastikas are too easy, but the systemic oppression and persecution of Jews was made in the name of crosses and crescents and empires. Leaders across the Western, Slavic, and Islamic worlds expelled Jews and closed their doors to us. The symbols are woven into those civilizations. You can't erase them. They're there. They've been there forever, for thousands of years. I responded, this is David Montefiore talking, to the Member of Parliament, Dr. Einat Wolf, in the following way. Because they published it, of course, on the internet. Quote, your observation, unfortunately, none. I'm a survivor of the Holocaust and the Battle of Britain. My father was first Cantor of the United Kingdom. He lost his entire family on the continent. First, they ran from Sanok in Galicia, a stone's throw, only about 140 some odd miles from Auschwitz. And then they had their backs to the English Channel in Antwerp. My father survived because he came to England to marry my mother, Rachel, a shidduch, a match made in heaven. I feel like we're spitting in the wind during this time of hysteria and pandemic. Even our own Jews, especially our Jews, have gone mad with genuflection before the altar of Baal. Let us hold the policeman who killed Floyd accountable to the fullest extent of the law. Let us prosecute the vandals who think it is okay to burn down someone's lifelong livelihood and business in a moment of hysteria and lawlessness to the fullest extent of the law. SEDER. SEDER. Order. As Rabbi Hanina had said, you've all heard this adage all of your lives, two wrongs don't make a right. And I have to reiterate, Rabbi Hanina, Dina de Malchuta Dina, the law of the land is the law. Which brings me to what happened this morning. This very morning, on Shabbat Ba'alotecha, President Trump addressed the new graduates of West Point. Those are the guys that we have to entrust our entire civilization to protect us. Let's hope that we have graduates who are decent young men and women who will make great leaders, and officers who will have to protect this civilization, the SEDER, the order of things. And I want to close with what President Trump said to these young graduates. Leaving here, you carry with you the respect of your fellow citizens. You will represent a nation and history and hope on our side. Your charge now is not only to protect our country, but to do what is right and just. As your commander-in-chief, I know you will. May God bless you. May God bless our men and women in uniform. And may God bless the United States of America. And with that, I'd like to go back to the Seder. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et ha'oretz. The earth was formed. The earth above, the waters below. And he formed the light, and he separated light from the darkness. There's a Seder, always a Seder, always an order of things. He didn't just build the world on nothing. First, he created the whole ball of wax, and then he started to craft what was in his mind's eye of creation. First, he put down the architecture, which I do, by the way, on a canvas first, and then I dropped my humans in. That's what God did. After he created, he separated the light, and he created the firmament. And he said, I think I like a little Gan Eden over here, a little Garden of Eden. He put Adam and Eve in there. And then much later, when he found out that he didn't like his creation, that the people on the earth weren't doing what he wanted to do, he destroyed it, he rebuilt it, only to wait a few thousand years to give us the Torah, which is from beginning to end a Seder, an order of things, the law of the land. They go hand in hand. Without the Seder, the Siddur, Jennifer, which I mentioned before, is the Shoresh is Seder, Siddur, is the order of things. Without the order, we daven first in the morning, we get up, we daven Shachris. In the afternoon, we daven Mincha. In the evening, we daven Mariv. That's the way it is. So I would say as a Kohen, Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Yevarechecha Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka, Yisur Adonai panav elecha v'yosem lecha shalom. I bless those officers who graduated this morning at West Point to keep us safe and to keep this republic well and hopeful and creative and loving above all.